Many young artists trying to get a rung up on the art world ladder couldn't care less about maintaining a connection to the great tradition of Western painting. They see Western art history, as a mere database, sometimes useful, sometimes ignorable, and sometimes, to switch metaphors, as a granny's attic in which they can play ironic dress-up. The art that most artists so inclined make is either installation art or photo text art or video art or increasingly a combination of all of them. To my mind, this art has more in common with theater than it has with painting or sculpture. That doesn't make it bad. Some of it, and to my mind usually the least ironic of it, such as Anne Hamilton's work, it's Anne Hamilton on the left, or Mary Lucier's, for instance, and you get no idea in an installation, a slide shot. It's just up there to have a visual. Anne Hamilton's or Mary Lucier's, for instance, is quite good. Make no mistake about it. Installation art is the enemy of painting. Why is installation art the enemy of painting? For one thing, in this time of severely restricted resources, it gets too much of the museum pie. Curators of contemporary art have found they can fill big galleries much more cost-effectively if the artist himself or herself is shipped in instead of the art. If the exhibition budget is spent on putting up the artist in a hotel, or better yet, in a trustee's home for a couple of weeks, on hiring a crew of local art students, and on purchasing a truckload of very unfine art-like materials for a show that can simply be junked when it's over, instead of spending a lot more money on crating, insurance, precarious art handling, a fastidious installation, and painstaking repacking of paintings. For another thing, a lot of installation art gets more social attention because it's closer to show business. The artist himself or herself is part of the work. And because the event, a more accurate term than exhibition, can be wrapped up in a blanket of community arts participation feel-good vibes. For a third thing, critics can write about it more easily. Critics since the 1960s hate writing about abstract painting because it makes them sound either like pretentious fools if they like it, or angry Philistines if they don't. Installation art filled with lumber and sand and wires and projected slides and performers is easier to write about in the same way that movies are easier to write about than modern dance. Every critic, no matter what his or her field, secretly or not so secretly, wants to write about movies. Nobody but dance critics wants to write about dance. And for a fourth thing, Randall Jarrell, the poet, I think it was he, once said that poetry cannot compete against billboards. I would submit that flat, static, comparatively moderately sized paintings hanging on plain walls under even, untheatrical light are the equivalents of poems in those thin little volumes of poetry, and that big, semi-dark, spooky rooms with mysteriously glowing video monitors and strange piles of junk are the equivalent of billboards.